The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, Book 1, The Dove, 5. This was bigger than had appeared from outside. Only a couple of paces inside the archway, and my paces were very short. The cave opened out into a seemingly vast chamber, whose top was lost in shadow. It was dark, but, though at first I neither noticed this nor looked for its cause, with some source of extra light that gave a vague illumination, showing the floor smooth and clear of obstacles, I made my way slowly forward, straining my eyes with deep inside me the beginning of that surge of excitement that caves have always started in me. Some men experience this with water. Some, I know, on high places. Some create fire for the same pleasure. With me it has always been in the depths of the forest, or the depths of the earth. Now I know why, but then I only knew that I was a boy who had found somewhere new, something he could perhaps make his own, in a world where he owned nothing. Next moment I stopped short. I was brought up by a shock which spilled the excitement through my bowels like water. Something had moved in the murk just to my right. I froze, still straining my eyes to see. There was no movement. I held my breath listening. There was no sound. I flared my nostrils, testing the air cautiously round me. There was no smell, animal or human. The cave smelt, I thought, of smoke and damp rock, and the earth itself, and of a queer musty scent I couldn't identify. I knew without putting it into words that had there been any other creature near me, the air would have felt different, less empty. There was no one there. I tried a word, softly in Welsh. "Greetings." The whisper came straight back at me in an echo so quick that I knew I was very near the wall of the cave. Then it lost itself, hissing in the roof. There was a moment there, at first, I thought, only an intensifying of the echoed whisper. Then the rustling grew and grew like the rustling of a woman's dress, or a curtain stirring in the draught. Something went past my cheek with a shrill, bloodless cry. Just on the edge of sound, another followed, and then another followed, and after them, flake after flake of shrill shadow pouring down from the roof, like leaves down a stream of wind, or fish down a fall. It was the bats, disturbed from their lodging in the top of the cave, streaming out now into the daylight valley. They would be pouring out of the low archway like a plume of smoke. I stood quite still, wondering if it was these that had made the curious musty smell. I thought I could smell them as they passed, but it wasn't the same. I had no fear that they would touch me. In darkness or light, wherever they speed, bats will touch nothing. They are so much creatures of the air, I believe, that as the air parts in front of an obstacle, the bat is swept aside with it. Like a petal carried downstream, they poured past, a shrill tide of them, between me and the wall, childlike, to see what the stream would do, how it would direct itself. I took a step nearer to the wall. Nothing touched me. The stream divided and poured on, the shrill air brushing both my cheeks. It was as if I did not exist. But at the same moment, when I moved, the creature that I had seen moved too. Then my outstretched hand met not rock, but metal, and I knew what the creature was. It was my own reflection. Hanging against the wall was a sheet of metal, burnished to a dull sheen. This, then, was the source of the diffused light within the cave. The mirror's silky surface caught obliquely the light from the cave's mouth, and sent it into the darkness. I could see myself moving in it like a ghost, as I recoiled and let fall the hand which had leapt to the knife at my hip. Behind me, the flow of bats had ceased, and the cave was still. Reassured, I sat where I was, studying myself with interest in the mirror. My mother had had once an antique from Egypt, but then, deeming such things to be vanity, she had locked it away. Of course, I had often seen my face reflected in water, but never my body mirrored till now. I saw a dark boy, wary, all eyes with curiosity, nerves, and excitement. In that light my eyes looked quite black. My hair was black, too, thick and clean, but worse cut and groomed than my pony's. My tunic and sandals were a disgrace. I grinned, and the mare flashed a sudden smile that changed the picture completely, and at once from a sullen young animal poised to run or fight, to something quick and gentle and approachable, something I knew even then that few people had ever seen. Then it vanished, and the weary animal was back. As I leaned forward to run a hand over the metal, it was cold and smooth and freshly burnished. Whoever had hung it, and he must be the same person who had used the cup of horn outside, had either been here very recently, or he still lived here, and might come back at any moment to find me. I was not particularly frightened. I had pricked to caution when I saw the cup. But one learns very young to take care of oneself, and the times I had been brought up in were peaceful enough, at any rate in our valley, but there are always wild men and rough men, and the lawless and vagabonds to be reckoned with, and any boy who likes his own company as I did must be prepared to defend his skin. I was wiry and strong for my age, and I had my dagger. That I was barely 7 years old never entered my head. I was Merlin, and, bastard or not, the king's grandson. I went on exploring. The next thing I found, a pace along the wall, was a box, and on the top of it shapes which my hands identified immediately as flint and iron and tinderbox, and a big, roughly made candle of what smelled like sheep's tallow. Beside these objects lay a shape which incredulously, inch by inch, I identified as the skull of a horned sheep. There were nails driven into the top of the box here and there, apparently holding down fragments of leather, but when I felt these carefully, I found the withered leather frameworks of delicate bone. They were dead bats, stretched and nailed on the wood. This was a treasure cave indeed. No find of gold or weapons could have excited me more. Full of curiosity, I reached for the tinderbox. Then I heard him coming back. My first thought was that he must have seen my pony. Then I realized he was coming from further up the hill. I could hear the rattling and scaling of small stones as he came down the screeve above the cave. One of them splashed into the spring outside, and then it was too late. I heard him jump down on the flat grass beside the water. It was time for the ringdove again. The falcon was forgotten. I ran deeper into the cave as he swept aside the boughs that darkened the entrance. The light grew momentarily enough to show me my way. At the back of the cave was a slope and a jut of rock at twice my height, a whitish ledge. A quick flash of sunlight from the mirror caught the wedge of shadow in the rock above the ledge, big enough to hide me. Soundless in my scuffed sandals, I swarmed to the ledge and crammed my body into that wedge of shadow, to find it was in fact a gap in the rock, giving apparently onto another smaller cave. I slithered in through the gap like an otter into the riverbank. It seemed that he had heard nothing. The light was cut off again as the boughs sprang back into place behind him, and he came into the cave. It was a man's tread, measured and slow. If I had thought about it at all, I suppose I would have assumed that the cave would be uninhabited, at least until sunset, that whoever owned the place would be away hunting, or about his other business, and would return only at nightfall. There was no point in wasting candles when the sun was blazing outside. Perhaps he was here now only to bring home his kill, and he would go again and leave me the chance to get out. I hoped he would not see my pony tethered in the hawthorn brake. Then I heard him moving, with the sure tread of someone who knows his way blindfolded, toward the candle and the tinder box. Even now I had no room for apprehension, no room indeed for any, but the one thought or sensation, the extreme discomfort of the cave into which I had crawled. It was apparently small, not much bigger than the round vats they use for dyeing, and much the same shape. Floor, wall, and ceiling hugged me round in a continuous curve. It was like being inside a large globe. Moreover, a globe studded with nails, or with its inner surface stuck all over with small pieces of jagged stone. There seemed no inch or surface not bristling like a bed of strewn flints, and it was only my light weight, I think, that saved me from being cut as I quested about blindly to find some clear space to lie on. I found a place, smoother than the rest, and curled there, as small as I could, watching the faintly defined opening and inching my dagger silently from its sheath into my hand. I heard the quick hiss and chime of flint and iron, and then the flare of light, intense in the darkness as the tinder caught hold, then the steady waxen glow as he lit the candle. Or rather, it should have been the slow growing beam of candle flame that I saw, but instead there was a flash, a sparkle, a conflagration, as if the whole pitch-soaked beacon was roaring up in flames. Light poured and flashed, crimson, golden, white, red, intolerable in my cave. I winced back from it, frightened, now heedless of pain and cut flesh, as I shrank against the sharp walls. The whole globe where I lay seemed to be full of flame. It was indeed a globe, a round chamber, floored, roofed, lined with crystals. They were fine as glass, and smooth as glass, but clearer than any glass I had ever seen, brilliant as diamonds. This, in fact, to my childish mind, was what they first seemed to be. I was in a globe lined with diamonds, 1,000,000 burning diamonds, each face of each gem wincing with the light, shooting it to and fro, diamond to diamond and back again, with rainbows and rivers and bursting stars, and a shape like a crimson dragon clawing up the wall, while below it a girl's face swam faintly with closed eyes, and the light drove right into my body as if it would break me open. I shut my eyes. When I opened them again, I saw that the golden light had shrunk and was concentrated on one part of the wall no bigger than my head, and from this, empty of visions, rayed the broken, brilliant beams. There was silence from the cave below. He had not stirred. I had not even heard the rustle of his clothes. Then the light moved. The flashing disk began to slide slowly across the crystal wall. I was shaking. I huddled closer to the sharp stones, trying to escape it. There was nowhere to go. It advanced slowly round the curve. It touched my shoulder, my head, and I ducked, cringing. The shadow of my movement rushed across the globe, like a wind eddy over a pool. The light stopped, retreated, fixed, glimmering in its place, then it went out. But the glow of the candle strangely remained, an ordinary, steady yellow glow beyond the gap in the wall of my refuge. "Come out." The man's voice, not loud, not raised with shouted orders like my grandfather's, was clear and brief, with all the mystery of command. It never occurred to me to disobey. I crept forward over the sharp crystals and through the gap. Then I slowly pulled myself upright on the ledge, my back against the wall of the outer cave, the dagger ready in my right hand, and looked down. And that's the end of chapter 5.